About a month ago, I decided it'd be a fun idea to try and breed some different shrimp in the fish room. I currently breed 3 different species: the blue dream shrimp, the yellow cherry, and the crystal red shrimp. The blue dream and the yellow cherry are both neocaridiners, and the crystal reds are caridiners, so they're a little bit more different. I decided that I wanted to try and breed a few different neocaridiners, given my success that I've had with these blue and yellows. I had a look around online and I had a look at some other people's fish rooms, and something caught my eye. I saw these beautiful snowball shrimp which might not stand out to a lot of beginners, but to someone who's played around with shrimp for a little bit, these really stood out to me. So they might just look like a white boring shrimp, but the thing with these guys is when the females become berried, what that means is they have eggs. The eggs are actually a white colour and they look like little snowballs in the shrimp's pleopods. These are just the flaps that the female shrimp keeps their eggs in. So I set my mind on getting a group of these guys to eventually breed in the fish room, and luckily enough I found someone who had some, so I went ahead and picked these guys up. I think I picked up 20 of them, and in today's video I'm going to show you guys the process of how I set up a shrimp breeding tank and the results that I got from this. So to start with, I chose one of my 20-gallon tanks on my 20-gallon tank rack wall in the fish room. I decided that if I was going to do this, I was going to do it properly, and I wanted to play around with something that I haven't done before. So I decided that I was going to paint the tank to make it look a little bit better and to make the shrimp stand out. So I wanted to paint the tank black, but to make this a little bit interesting, I decided to add a texture to it. You can see here I'm going over the top of the tank with this texture. Now this is just a granite spray paint. You can get this at any hardware store, and then I go over it with just your standard black spray paint. As you can see, this results in a nice granite look, and in my opinion it just makes it look a little bit less dull, and this is going to be a very simple setup, so making sure we do all the small things really well will just make the result look a little bit more complete. I'm not going for an aquascape here, I'm going for a breeding tank, and there's a few things that are going to be different about this breeding tank than an aquascape. Firstly, we want to be able to move stuff around in the tank so that when we do have hundreds of shrimp in the tank, we can actually catch them out and harvest them. Because if we have a ton of hardscape, it's going to be impossible trying to catch the shrimp out, and it's also going to be hard to see how the shrimp are actually going. There's going to be very minimal items in here, and we just want to make everything look as clean as possible. So after I'd finished spraying the tank, I then went ahead and added a sponge filter. So you can see me adding this up the back left hand corner. So this is just a small sponge filter, nothing special, with a bit of air going into it. The next thing I added was a piece of coral. So this is just a piece of crushed coral. You can find these at the beach, or you can find them in local aquarium shops, and what these do is add a little bit of carbonate hardness into the water to help the shrimp with their molting. So my water for some reason doesn't have a lot of carbonate hardness, and I found in the past when I haven't added this, shrimp have had trouble molting, and the result of this is a few dead shrimp. So this just helps all the shrimp to molt in the tank. I don't know whether they eat it or whether it dissolves into the water, but it does help a lot. After this, I decided to add some live plants because shrimp absolutely love live plants, and I went with none other than some Java moss. So this is just a nice healthy clump of Java moss. You can get this at any aquarium shop. It grows super easy, and it looks really good in my opinion, and shrimp absolutely love it. This will help to rear a bunch of little microorganisms that the shrimp can eat, and a lot of biofilm for the shrimp to eat as well. After this, I went ahead and added another live plant. So here you can see I've got some wisteria, and I've just placed a little rock on top to stop it from floating up to the top. And over the next few months, this will grow into a nice big green bush for the shrimp to go and play in. And then I also added an old bottle brush pod that I collected from the beach, just to help add some tannins to the water and to lower the pH, and also to help grow some biofilm on as well. And then to finish off the breeding setup, I added a pre-soaked Indian almond leaf to the front of the tank, another nice little botanical for the shrimp to munch on. So after this was all done, it was time to add the shrimp. So I went ahead and did a drip acclimation. As you can see, I've tied up a little knot in this air hose tubing, and this just helps to limit the flow from the airline tubing into the container. I then let it drip for about 45 minutes to an hour to slowly acclimate the shrimp into the tank. What this does is it just helps the shrimp to avoid being shocked, and it also avoids them to have early molt. So it's really helpful and important that you do this with every single shrimp that you add to your tank. So after this was done, I then went ahead and added the shrimp, and I slowly just introduced them into the tank, and you can see them all swimming around. And I just did this very gradually, and after all the shrimp are in, I then left them and had a look at them. So you can see them all running around the tank. I added a little bit of food, and I wasn't too worried about feeding these guys right at the start because they can go quite a long time without food, and they're also going to eat some of that Indian almond leaf if they were hungry, but they all looked really healthy. I didn't notice any problems. They all acclimated really well. There weren't any berried females, and I didn't actually at this stage know if there were any females, so I just left them be and came back a month later. Okay, so it's now been a month and we're back in the shrimp breeding tank, and I've got some really good news. So the shrimp have done fantastic. These have probably been some of the easiest shrimp to set up in my opinion, and to be honest, I haven't even lost a single one yet. So normally when I add shrimp to a new setup, I expect to lose maybe 1 or 2 of them if I buy 10 or 20 of them. And this time I didn't lose a single one. So I don't know whether it's because I did something right or if the shrimp are really hardy, but we didn't lose a single shrimp. And in fact, we've already had some breeding going on. So we've got one big buried female. She's running around the tank and enjoying a lot of the different foods I've been feeding them. And you can see those beautiful snowballs in her pleropods there. This is so exciting, and this is exactly why I did this project, just to see these shrimp with the little snowballs in their shrimp flaps. So she's doing really well. There's actually a few other shrimp around the tank that are definitely females because they have huge saddles. The saddle is where the eggs are stored and developed inside of the shrimp, and because these guys are so transparent, you can actually see the saddle really well. So there's a nice big shrimp here with a big saddle, and she's going to deposit those eggs into her pleropod soon, and they'll become fertilized, and she'll help continue on the colony. So all the shrimp are doing fantastic. I haven't seen any babies in here yet, but other than the shrimp, you can see the Java moss has grown quite a bit, and that's actually got a little bit of hair algae on it, so I'm going to see if that becomes a problem a bit later on. There's lots of surface algae on the sides and front of the tank. I actually had to scrape this off because it was all over the front of the tank, but you can see it's a really big thick layer on the bottom and the sides of the tank. I haven't bothered scraping it off because I think it looks really cool with the granite, so I've just left that for the time being. And you can see they've absolutely decimated that Indian armor leaf out the front. All that's left is a little spine of the leaf. They've eaten off all the leaf matter, and it's almost about time that I add another one in there. So our wisteria plant hasn't grown that much. I'm not too surprised. It sometimes takes these plants a little bit of time to settle in. The Java moss has actually grown quicker than the wisteria leaf, which is kind of funny because I was expecting the wisteria to grow a little bit quicker. But anyways, it has grown a little bit, but the Java moss has definitely overtaken this tank, and yeah, everything in here is done really well. So I'm going to be keeping you guys updated with the breeding, and I'll show you guys when there's thousands of them in here and just how cool it looks when you feed them. So with about 20 in here, it's not too crazy when you feed them, but once we build up our little snowball army, we're going to have so many shrimp in here, it's not even going to be funny, and we'll be able to feed them a bunch of interesting things, and we'll actually be able to start selling them on the website. So this is my basic shrimp setup. For all you who are wondering, the pH in the tank is 6.8. The hardness is about 200 parts per million, which is a little bit high, but these guys don't seem to mind it. They've all been shedding their exoskeletons really well, and I haven't had any issues with them. And the temperature in here is about 24 to 25 degrees Celsius, which is also a little bit warmer, but that hasn't seemed to bother them at all. So yeah, this is my basic shrimp setup. Thank you so much for watching it, guys. I really do appreciate it. This is the setup that I use for all of my shrimp enclosures, and every time I want to breed some Neocaridina shrimp, this is exactly how I set it up. It's a little bit different for the Caridinas, but we'll talk about that in a future video when we start maybe another Caridina shrimp breeding setup. But until then, I'll see you guys in the next video.